Philipe Galiay. Philipe is a policy officer at the European Commission and has the responsibility for implementing responsible research and innovation in Horizon 2020 and beyond. And Philipe has followed this process and has some insight also from the Commission, and he looks into the future in the Commission of what they are thinking about open research agenda setting. Philipe does not has a presentation, and he's on the phone. Are you there, Philipe?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We can.
Okay, fine. So, shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, hello everybody, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar. And thank you for the first three presentations that were really very interesting. Just 2 points before starting. So I find this webinar very, very timely for many reasons, and we can address research agenda setting from many perspectives. But I will limit myself to two of them. Of course, there will be the European Commission level in one part, and there will be another part on the global level. And another point that I want to make before starting, obviously, I will just comment on information that is already in the public domain, because there are many things going on right now in the services here. So the first part about the EC level perspectives. 2021 may seem very far from now, but and Horizon 2020 is running full speed. But since a few months here, we have already entered a kind of transition period from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe. And this issue about citizen engagement in science and technology and research and innovation is very much present. As you know, it has been associated since the start, since the year 2000. There is a reflection about citizens and science and society. And from our point of view here, it's very interesting to see how this reflection is evolving during this transition period. So we have now science with and for society, and we have now responsible research and innovation in Horizon 2020. So where are we going about these issues in Horizon Europe? What can we already see right now, and what can we foresee for the post-2020 period? There are four points I want to highlight here. The first one is about the European Commission proposal for Horizon Europe. As you know, there is no specific part dedicated to science and society, so there is no visibility, no specific budget attached to these aspects. And this seems to be more or less agreed by the Council. You may have seen the partial general agreement adopted on the 30th of November. You may have seen as well the reports from the European Parliament, the NICA and the ELER report. So there is no real strong things against the proposal of the Commission regarding the disappearance of SWOS and RRI. So this is the first indication. There is a second indication if we zoom on the DG Research and Innovation structure. There you may have seen a change in the organigram since the 1st of October. The SWOS unit has disappeared, so no more science with and for society on the organigram. There has been a creation of an open science unit and of a unit dealing with the innovation ecosystem. My sector, the responsible research and innovation sector, has been moved under the open science unit, and we are now invited to have a strong orientation towards citizen science that is part of the open science agenda. And finally, there is a creation of an advisor post on open science and citizens close to our Director General. There is a third aspect to consider, that is the new narrative for the post-2020 European Commission Research and Innovation agenda that is emerging. I think that you have been following our policy activities during the last 2 years or so, and you may have noticed that policymakers are regularly highlighting the importance of this connection to citizens. And this is obvious in the Lamy report last year. It's also obvious in the Mazzucato report on missions this year. So, and when Carlos Moedas is speaking about the future, there is always some citizen dimension somewhere. So, obviously, it seems that there is a new regime that is being set in place at EC level for research agenda setting, and that European citizens could have a say in shaping and running Horizon Europe. Nevertheless, there are still very big question marks that are pending, and this is the fourth point under this part. How, when, where, and to which extent can we engage citizens in Horizon Europe and in our own policies? Here there are several possibilities. The most obvious possibility, and I think that it makes sense, is about the strategic planning process that should and will take place before the writing of the work programs implementing Horizon Europe from 2021. And this should indeed orient the work programs that we will have to launch in 2021. Another possibility is when defining the missions that will be run as part of the second pillar of Horizon Europe. So it seems now that the main areas of the missions have been decided, so without citizens for this, and it has been decided at political level. But there still appears to be an openness to give citizens input on the specifics of the missions, though it remains to be seen how this will be done. So will this be tokenistic, or will it be continuous and a real process and genuine process? This remains to be seen. So these are two very interesting possibilities, but this does not prevent other initiatives. You know that there will be partnerships. They will continue. In the structure of Horizon Europe, there are also the clusters of Pillar 2. There is also the Pillar 3 on innovation, so there could be things related to user-led innovation, for example. And in the part, the fourth pillar, if you want, about reforming and enhancing the European research and innovation system, this part includes open science, and it includes as well citizen science. So for the time being, I cannot say much more than that. We are still in the middle of the interinstitutional dialogue leading to the decision on Horizon Europe. But what I can say, nevertheless, it's that, as you know, serious exchanges with citizens take time. And in that case, given that the decisions are coming rather quickly now, probably, one can question if there will be enough time for the beginning of Horizon Europe. So my guess is that, my guess and my hope probably, is that projects that have been done before, such as Simulact, could have a role here, and that we could start Horizon Europe with some inspiration from such projects, and New Horizon could help as well for this process. So this is all I can say now for the this first part about the EC level perspective. There is this other part about the global level perspective, and this is obviously linked to the first EC perspective. 10 days ago, nobody knew He Jiankui, if I pronounce it well, and this person has become a star of the social media in just one day. No need to explain why. You all know what happened in China with the gene-edited babies. Some people will say today that they knew it would happen and where it would happen. But whatever the case, in any case, now we will have to face that, and it's a start of a very difficult and sensitive debate. And the consequences of this debate can hardly be foreseen. It goes much beyond science, of course, and it raises a lot of questions in society. And around me, I've heard a lot of these questions already, such as if it is so easy to edit human genomes, are there other instances of gene-edited babies that are not yet known around the world? Or can we really trust scientists if they can so easily get rid of the most basic ethical rules? Or are we really in a position to regulate science at all? See what happened with nuclear energy, for example. Or is it too late, in any case, to regulate and, be on the safe side? The Science Reason for Society part of Horizon 2020 has been supporting a number of projects, and notably the RING project with the UNESCO among the partners. And UNESCO is in charge of a work package that aims to bring the RRI debate at global level. So the question is, could such a project be part of a beginning of a solution to the present situation? And if not, who will be in a position to impulse and fund such an initiative, trying to reach a global consensus on this particular issue and on other similar burning issues? What is the role of citizens in debating the ethics of research and innovation, be it for gene editing or brain research or other emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, for example? Are citizens to decide on the areas of interest to them and leave the rest to the research and innovation system? Or should they help set the rules and find the solutions as well? So finally, and I will just finish with two more questions. What is the role of the European Commission level on the global scene? And the last question, where will be the entry point or the entry points in Horizon Europe in our open science and open innovation policy to cope with these issues with all their complexities? So, as you can understand, we are working on these aspects right now. As I told you, on the legal text, there is not really an answer to all these questions. You have to know that beyond the legal text, then you enter into the operational level, and we will have internally to draft guidances for Horizon Europe. We will have to reflect on the key performance indicators that are already announced, but then we will have to see how to get to the point where we get the data feeding these key performance indicators. So there are many, many things to be done, details, but as we know, the devil is in the details. So it's a very interesting period right now. So that's why this seminar is really timely and interesting for us to fit in ideas to deal with all these very difficult issues. So I will stop here, and I'll be glad to discuss more about that and to exchange with you right now. Thank you very much to you all.
Thank you, Philippe. I can say that the CRISPR baby is an example of researchers doing something that which other people thought they would take a discussion about first before they would do it. The Human Brain Project, and especially the fact that the Human Brain Project is making a very effective, I think it will be over time, a very effective infrastructure for brain research, because it gives a lot of tools to brain researchers that they never had before, ever had before. I think that is an area where these kind of things could come up as well. So these kind of things where researchers suddenly move very fast on something which the rest of society would say, wow, maybe we should have had a little discussion about this before you did it. And I think in that respect, I think something is happening in the brain, worldwide brain community, because the Human Brain Project is the only one of these big, large brain projects which has ethics and society and responsible research and innovation part. And what we can see now is that the others are beginning to copy this. So USA, Australia, and others are beginning simply to look into their brain projects and see how can we ensure that what comes out of this is societally responsible. I also think that part of the motivation we have to discuss open research agenda setting in the frame of Human Brain Project and brain science, neuroscience, is that what we imagine, you could say the environment that we imagine that open research agenda setting in neuroscience, the environment it should go on in should be a quite broad community. In the next phase of the project, there will be a lot of efforts on community building, and as it looks now, this community building will not only be about neuroscientists, it will also be about stakeholders, patients groups, and so on. So what we can hope is that if open research agenda setting begins to speak to a wider audience and also uses this wider audience in its work, then hopefully it will also end up with ideas for projects which have a much broader societal backup. So I also think what we would like to do in this, in describing what the Human Brain Project can do with Open Research Agenda, is also to use Open Research Agenda Setter to ensure responsibility. And I think it can add, and I think there's perspective to that. Another thing I would say to your presentation is also that the Human Brain Project can in a way be seen as one of the first mission-oriented research projects. And in that respect, I also think that we have a responsibility to add to the development of practices in mission research. And I also hope that this open research agenda setting paper or opinion we will make can spread a little wider than only to the HPP. And there, Philipe, you and the Open Science unit in the Commission can certainly help. So I think we should get in contact with each other when we have our opinion ready.
Okay, you are welcome.
Other
By the way, I share, of course, your comments.
Okay, good. I still have the same question as earlier, Christine. We have to find your earlier question.
Yeah, I can
Okay,
voice it. Well, thank you all very much for very interesting presentations. My question, which is a very open one, is that in the case of the Human Brain Project, the science and technologies that have been in development in the project have been running now for 5 years, and for some of the key programs actually in the project for well over a decade. So I'm really wondering at this stage, what kind of methodology can we hope to find to go beyond just looking for buy-in from the public, really?
Yeah, that's a very open question, because I just think I just add a little to it. I think open research agenda setting is a buy-in from the public, in the sense that you get the perspective and you also get an issue of what people focus on, but also what they don't want in a way, which if it plugs into a wide community in the HPP, then I think that it will trigger discussions of more focus on societal needs in neuroscience. So that is only part of your question, basically, that I try to answer there. But I guess I guess if I know you well, Christine, you also have some input to this yourself.
Yes, no, I agree. It's just that clearly some of the technology that is being developed by the Human Brain Project is quite advanced by now. So it's very hard to see, it's been closed already. So it's really hard to see how to have an impact. And I'm really, I'm adding myself in the mix, really.
Okay, now I understand your question better, to be honest. I think that the next phase of HPP will go into not only developing it will develop the infrastructure, but it will also develop the collaboration in Europe on neuroscience for the future in the whole organization around the infrastructure. What is called the legal entity now will develop into an organization of people interested and having stakes in neuroscience. So hopefully after the Human Brain Project, there will be much more focus on what should go on, which kind of research should be done on the infrastructure, and not so much of developing the concrete infrastructure as it is now. And it is in this, you could say, it is very much the open research agenda setting, I think, should feed into this very much about which kind of research should be done on the infrastructure. And then the infrastructure is just a tool for that. That answers your question a little more, doesn't it?
Yes, with some reservations.
Yeah.
Lars, can I ask a question to you?
Yeah.
Can you precise what you understand by infrastructure?
Yeah. Yes. The Human Brain Project is now developing a big variety of tools for neuroscience and neuro-inspired ICT. So in the ICT end, for example, this is about developing and optimizing computers by making new computers which are inspired by how the brain works, which has already ended up with something they call neuromorphic computers, which are kind of an analog computer working with spikes like the brain is, instead of with bits in a normal computer. And also there's work being done about what we call bio-IA, which is a new form developing a theory for new forms of computing, which are based on ideas and hypotheses on how the brain works. For example, one theory is that the brain always make a lot of different foresights in a situation, and then the input you get from your senses are used, and from your memory are used to sort between this constant production of scenarios. So our brains are huge scenario producing machines and scenario selecting machines, and these scenarios are basically what we make our decisions out of. So and now they're trying to make computers and a software which mimics this way of making artificial intelligence. So this is on the ICT side. On the neuroscience side, there is, for example, huge work on making infrastructure on brain atlases down to very, very high resolution. There are ways of making different forms of disease signatures. For example, there's a quite big work on that on epilepsy in the project. There is a medical informatics platform which is developed to be able to make science on medical brain data, but also in the longer run. But there is actually a prototype of it now. Make what we call a local medical informatics platform, which can help clinicians to work directly on clinical data and clinical research when they are working with patients. So that these are just a few of the platforms. So it's really digital tools for large-scale computing neuroscience.
Yeah, the question behind the question was, is it only indeed hardware, hard tool for science, or does infrastructure covers as well governance aspects, hard law, soft law, code of conduct, guidance, guidelines, etc., etc. Because I would consider that, broadly speaking, this is part of what we need so that brain science can thrive. No?
Yeah, and I would say it does. There's quite big ethical compliance work being done in the project, and also beyond compliance work. So yes, I think so, and I think that's one of the specificities of HPCP compared to the other brain projects.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe Inga could add to this, because that's what's going on in the group of Bernd and Inga and so on. Yeah, you're on, Inga.
Yes. Yes, I think it is a bigger question, because all the infrastructure, from what I know, infrastructure models and everything is being under preparation, and of course the compliance as well as data governance and data protection are very important part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, the HPP was when you say data governance and privacy and so on, from the beginning, the ideas of the things HPP should develop was without privacy protection, to be honest. And one of the things the Ethics and Society group has done in the project is to make them understand that a project like the Human Brain Project should be privacy state of the art. And I think that is actually what the project is doing and going for now. Well, other questions, comments? If not so, then okay, yeah.
So Lars, this is Carthage. Just listening to that discussion, it seems to me that there are quite different elements of broadly spoken citizen engagement in relation to the Human Brain Project. So there's the issues around the actual data, which is subject data, and the role of the data providers in dictating what the future agenda should be and what that data would be used for. Presumably a lot of that has already been considered, but that's part of it. There's the role of patients or people who directly would be affected by some of the things that might be done. So sort of real interest groups. And then there's a more general, what does the general public think of what the future research agenda might be for brain research. But it seems to me that these are all different aspects that require different approaches, and some of them have probably already been taken into account, I'm sure, but others may not have. Has that been thought through in terms of who is going to set which agenda for who, and were citizens engaged in this, or different groups of citizens who need to be engaged in that? I don't know if that makes sense, but if not, anyway, I'll leave it there.
I think it makes perfect sense, and it connects very much to what I said earlier, that I think of what we should think of when we make this opinion is that there should be multiple approaches, because I think that open research agenda setting, to make sense in brain science, has to be open to many different kinds of actors. because they can add different forms of knowledge which all can contribute to making the right research agenda. Just to take one interest group, the pharmaceutical industry, which has big problems making new drugs for mental disease. I think a dialogue between them and others, and with people from the Human Brain Project, who can also tell a little about what can be done in this kind of infrastructure research. I think that can potentially add with new ideas that can end up with new benefits. But I also think that citizens and patient groups can add very much to agenda setting for brain research. Priority setting, what are we looking for? For example, in drug design, which kind of illnesses are the ones that many have, or are the ones that few have, which is a problem in research. That it's more interesting to look at small problems than large problems in a way. And so these priority setting processes, I also think it can influence that. So my hope is that there will be citizen and patient engagement, and that there will be a community which embraces this and takes it into that talks about, well, how are we going to, which things are we going to focus on together in the future. I hope this at least gives some answer to your question, Carpet.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. There's also obviously then in the ethical issues that were raised as well, and how and who you engage in the discussion around those, which is linked to the setting the research agenda, but maybe also needs to be considered differently in a way.
I think so, and I also, because we make citizen engagement on different issues in the ACP. Right now we're planning one on artificial intelligence for the future, and I think when we do that, there will also be things we can pick out of the answers we get, which are relevant for open research agenda setting. So we will also, I mean, that's at least how I think of it now, that we should give a quite wide toolbox from methods where you focus on open research agendas, but also for piggybacking on other things that are being done. I think all of it is relevant. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Well, I would have, Philippe speaking, I would have many comments and questions. If I have to pick only one, that would be the issue of timing. Because this is a very big problem, I think, for us here. It takes a lot of time to engage citizens, and when you are a policymaker, there is a time for the decision, there is a time for the preparation, the time to do it, and then the time to insert what you have found into the policy instruments. And at European level, this is just huge. You know, it takes 3, 4, 5 years sometimes. So the question here is also, and Niklas said something about that when presenting Simulac, saying that what Simulac has done was still valid. Is there a kind of consumption date of what the citizens have achieved? You know, for example, the topics from Simulac. When can we use them, and up to when can we use them, saying, okay, this is the vision from citizens, because I suppose that these visions are also evolving, and we have to take this into account. So it's very difficult to make this coupling between the dialogue and the consultation with citizens and the running of the policy instruments. So we should, if there is a toolkit, this should be taken into account, and it should be clear for everybody how to couple these two aspects, I think.
One thing I have, and I was inspired mainly by the workshop we had a couple of weeks ago in Brussels, One of the thinking I have is around this, and which I think we would put into the opinion, is that it might be fruitful to think of the yielding of ideas and visions and topics as one process, and the use of it as another process, so that there can be a continuous yielding of idea, and then the actual program development processes plug into this pool is continually being developed, and plugs in and analyzes of what is relevant to take up here. So there's, if you say, you have a continuous production of visions, ideas, and topics, and you have some sort of infrastructure which makes it available, and then those who want to use it can plug into that infrastructure and use it when they need it. Because I think the projects we have had already show that it's very, very difficult to make the two timings fit, the production and the use.
And I would say that it's also very easy for those who do not want, the visions to interfere, to say that it's too early or it's too late. So I agree with you that with these two processes separate but connected, this can be a good answer to this issue.
Yes. I even under the workshop we had, I began to draw a little drawing, which I might try to make a little more perfect and put it into the opinion. Let's see. of some sort of unconnected flows in the use and in the production.
Okay. That's already a practical output then of this workshop.